Coastal Championship Wrestling here at Coral Springs Charter School in South Florida. Big night of wrestling action. What motivates you? Well, this is such an inspirational, motivational story. Come on in, guys. Frankie Reyes trains wrestlers, referees, promotes shows, does it all. Tell us who you have here, Frankie.
Well, I have here the oldest student that ever trained, Joe Sarracino. Now he's 61. At the time he started training, he was 60. So, Joe, you want to give us a backstory on everything?
Yeah, probably back in 2007, my son had lost his mom, and actually, because of being in such grief, I thought, you know, what could we do to cause him to, you know, move forward and get excited? Well, we both loved wrestling. And so with that in mind, I actually started taking him to events, we started doing things, and then one thing led to another, and I decided that I would be the first guy that would ever try to, I said, Frankie, I says, are we going to get a chance to train? And he says, yeah, I'll go ahead and train you. And so, you know, one thing led to another, and it worked out.
Frankie, when he came to you with that, what were your thoughts? What was going on with you to have somebody this age, 60 years old, senior citizen, AARP, that's coming to you? I mean, usually you have guys, what, like 20 years old,
well,
25?
Actually, at the time he came to me, I was trying to recruit a couple of kids, you know, who were in their, you know, late teens, early 20s. And Joe came up to me and he says, would you train me? And of course I had a look on my face like, okay, you know.
Sure.
And I told him, Joe, are you in good health? First of all, I asked him how old he was. And he told me, I said, okay, well, okay. So then I told him, you know, how are you physically? He says, great. I said, how are you mentally? I said, great. He says, okay, you give me the passion, I'll give you the skills. So without fail, I put him through everything that I put the young kids through.
Where at? Tell us about where you train.
In Tampa, at the legendary Professional Wrestling Academy. Sure. He was training. I mean, he was in there doing the squats, doing the sit-ups, running the ropes, you know, doing all the holds, doing all the movers, doing all the rolls, you know, doing all the flips. I mean, Joe was in there with those young kids, and you know, like it says back here, what motivates you? Well, believe it or not, Joe motivated those young kids. They say, well, if this guy can do it, holy smokes, why can't we? And of course, that puts a big smile on the old coach's face. You know, to see all these kids and this young guy right here in there doing the stuff. You know, it's just a great thing. And this past June 9th, Joe made his debut.
Now, Joe made his debut, but before we get to that, because that is so cool, did you have any concerns?
My only concern was, as I said, him keeping up with the younger kids. Of course, when I teach completely different than everybody else does. I teach at their pace. So Joe, you know, we did it at a much slower pace. But then Joe started to catch on, and his pace, you know, just a little bit more, just a little more, and he kept up with the young kids. You know, I'm very proud of him.
Joe, how did you feel those first few times you were in there?
Now that we're a little settled down here, every single training session, I went with so much anxiety, I didn't think I'd be able to go to the next one. And when I would say to my son, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull this off. This is way harder than I thought it was going to be. And he wouldn't let me give up. And so every time I came, I'd try a little bit more. Coach would continue to say, do you want to try this if you're not comfortable? And I actually trusted that if he thought I could do it, I would do it. And so, you know, one thing led to another, and even now, Guinness World Book of Records is actually considering me as the only man in the world to attempt to become a pro wrestler at 60, and then at 61 actually make the debut. Now, there's more wrestlers that actually are wrestling into the 60s, but there's never been one that we're aware of. They're even saying in the world that has actually attempted to start at 60 and pull it off at 61.
You had the big match. Tell us about that. You put about a year's training in.
16 months.
16 months. So 16 months, over a year, right? Over a year then. 16 months. Tell us the show, where it was. Give us a little background.
It was with Pride of Wrestling, of which I'm associated with. It happened on June the 9th in St. Petersburg at the PAL of St. Petersburg. They were gracious enough to have us there. Joe went out there, and
who did he work, and who was in his corner?
He worked.
Good question.
He worked another one of my students, Chief Eddie Two Rivers, and in Joe's corner was his son Joey, and in Chief's corner was the legendary Bob Cook. Well, when Joey saw that, he came in the dressing room and got the old coach out there. So Joey and I were behind him.
You got the coach out there. Frankie got out there. That's right.
And we were behind him 1,000%.
I don't know. I think Joey could have took Bob.
I think so. I really
You know,
think
if you
so
see
too.
the footage that's on YouTube, it actually came out today. If you see the footage, you'll see at the very end, he actually got in between Bob Cook and myself, and was actually holding his own, I think.
Nice, nice. Maybe might be a future here, right here, right?
Could be. We're already talking, making some negotiations about me starting to train Joey if I'm still around at the time.
Which we hope is the case.
And I'm very proud to say that at the end of that match, Joe had his hand raised.
Nice.
And I was very proud of that fact.
Crowd reaction, and this was like debut. What did you do? What did you all do on the mic with your ring announcer? Just introducing him. Debut, 61 years old.
61 years old, making his debut, first time in a wrestling ring. The crowd was on their feet. They were behind him. We had over 150 people there, and they were yelling and screaming. They were behind Joe. And of course, anybody who's ever done anything, you get that adrenaline going. You get those people behind you. Oh man, the crowd was electric. And at the end of the match, when he had his hand raised, people were on their feet, and it was a great night for everyone.
How do you feel after that?
Well, so the basic question is this just going to be a fluke? Was it going to be a one-time thing? And I'm going to sum it up to this. When I bought my wrestling boots, which Coach said I needed some wrestling boots, and they're not cheap, so Joey says to me, you're not going to spend all that money for these wrestling boots and only wrestle once? I'm going, oh my gosh. I guess I'm going to do it again and again. Oh, I love it. Just absolutely love it. I'm telling you, don't try this at home. I mean, seriously, it's the hardest thing that I have ever had to do. It pushed me physically, it pushed me mentally, but because I had a purpose in mind moving forward. And I want to leave this guy with a legacy that, you know, you really can do anything you want if you try hard enough.
Joey, what did you think about that whole experience so far of Dad being able to pull that off?
I mean, I thought it was really impressive because he's never really done anything like athletic before.
Couch potato, there you go. So he surprised you.
Yeah.
And what was it like for both of you, just having some type of emotion, memory for your mom, your wife,
well,
doing this too?
Grandma and Grandpa, her mom and Dad were at the match, and she sends me a text and she says, I can hear Carmella now saying, go Joe, go. Go Joe, go Joey, go, and she would just be so absolutely proud of you guys. And so, you know, that was the reason. When Paul Guzzo, who wrote the first article in the Tampa Bay Times, and then it came out again Monday, his statement is something that I've hung on to. He said, the reason I've done this wasn't to be able to get before a great crowd, but he made this statement. He did it for an audience of one. And really, that's what kept me going. Or I don't know how I would have pulled this off.
Frankie, tell us social media for the school, for the wrestling company. What do you have for us?
I believe it's prideofwrestling.com.
Yes.
Right now, we're in flux with the school. We're moving. So, you know, we're not really doing anything with that as of yet. You know.
But the Tampa St. Pete area is where the school is going to be located, or is located, will be located?
Actually, right now, we're in Bradenton.
Okay.
And we're also going to have one in Newport Richey, and we're finding a nice location for Tampa as well. So we'll have 3 ways, you know, for anyone in that area who wants to come out and train.
Thank you so much, everybody. Great job by all of you. Inspiration. Hey, 60 years old, 61, you could do whatever you want.